Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hello, Marina.
How are you, Richard?
Yes, I'm really, really well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I have to say, because I can't even wait for recommendations on this one, I read your book. I read Richard's new book, listeners, We Solve Murders, which is out on September the 12th. And I have to say, he has done it again. If you were worried that he wasn't going to repeat the extraordinary success of Thursday Murder Club, I so love the three main characters. Obviously, you do Heart very well, Richard, as you know, but it's so funny, and it's completely different settings to the Thursday Murder Club. Although there is some good pub quiz stuff in there as well.
There's some pub quiz stuff, but yeah, a bit more globetrotting. Oh, I'm so happy you liked it.
Thank you so much. I absolutely loved it, and I cannot wait to see. I mean, that's the trouble with you. You always want the next one straight away, but you do write them so quickly that perhaps we'll get it.
One a year, I try and do. Oh, and it's got a great front cover as well.
It's terrific.
Yeah, and you say it's available
like those
to pre-order.
airport novels of the what's the decade? I'm thinking
Arthur Haley, Lynn Dayton. Yeah. So, I'm so pleased you liked it. Thank you. I wish you'd written a novel that I'd read this week and I could return the favour. It's about time you did.
I need to get on with that. Now, please, can you also update me on the settling in of Lottie, the kitten?
Oh, I saw a headline, I think it was the Daily Mail, said Richard Osman welcomes new family member. And I was like, okay.
There's nothing you can say on this podcast that doesn't become a really bad piece of clickbait.
She is great. Her and Liesel are now in the same room at times. Lottie is so desperate to play with Liesel. Liesel is like, well, I mean, come on, guys. This is absolutely outrageous. So she just sits as high up as she can and occasionally just sort of flicks her paw out to bat Lottie away. And Lottie's going, come and play. So I think
it'll all come together.
I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful.
So Molly May Hague and Tommy Fury.
They met on Love Island and they were a sort of golden couple, and we don't know the full details of it, and we're certainly not going to get particularly into this side of it, but Molly May has abruptly ended the relationship, I think, on receipt of information.
Yes. And
to me, it's interesting in the way that these platforms themselves, particularly Instagram, have completely insinuated themselves into the fabric of our lives. Now, Molly May was chosen for Love Island because she had a following on Instagram, and she had I think she started it with something like 100,000 followers.
Which sounds like a lot.
Which sounds like a lot. By the end of just that season of Love Island, she had 2 million. She said later, I did it as a business move, and it's almost like the finding love was, that's
yes, of course.
That's a sort of side effect.
You think sometimes people weren't going on blind dates
but it's interesting.
To find a wife?
Well, as you know, once you get past 1 million followers, you are a brand. And so much of their relationship seems to have been sort of funneled through this platform. There were always these mini storms, like why hadn't he proposed to her? When he did eventually propose to her, it was an event for Instagram funnily enough, I was recently having to Google events companies, and there's a whole bit of the drop-down menu now that is proposals. Yes, these are now events, and of course they are events, and they are chronicled on social media. And there's a sort of sense, in a weird way, isn't it, that if it hasn't been on social media, then perhaps it hasn't actually occurred. Did
it happen? If a man proposes to a woman in a forest and it gets no likes,
and did it happen? If there isn't accompanied by the caption, she said yes. Did it actually occur?
Or her just pointing at him going, this one?
Well, when she was recalling their engagement, she said he managed to trick me into going to the proposal site, which had all been decked out for the benefit of the platform, by creating a fake brand trip. So that's how he got her to go. Now, even when this relationship has fallen, first of all, she's probably been sent the pictures that are, whatever they may be, or the footage that has precipitated the sundering in the relationship.
Whatever precipitated the sundering.
The sundering. Yeah. She's probably been sent those via the platform.
Yeah. Hashtag precipitating the sundering.
Yeah. You see it all the time.
Yeah.
And she then had to say, I'm sorry, I've taken an accidental break from posting. People have to now say, we talked about this the other week, don't we? People saying, I'm going on holiday, in case anyone wonders why they're not posting. And all these little conventions have been established. People saying, oh, look, her parents have unfollowed him. Or a journalist, I spoke to a journalist about this quite recently, and he said that showbiz journalists, as we've discussed before, used to go out and try and speak to people and find the stories that way. Now, a huge amount of, 90% of the job is trying to see what happens on social media. And he had paid for the development of a piece of software that enables him to wring stories out of Instagram, either basically by working out who's unfollowing whom, who's liking, via those sort of unfollowings and likes and sort of slightly more below the radar aspects of it all. And it's sort of really weird when you're reading the story, you can hardly work out where all their endorsements stop. It kept saying the stories about the supposed betrayal of her. They were talking about Tommy Fury saying he was down in Grey Goose vodka, and I was thinking, is this a sponsorship?
Even when you're cheating,
he arrived in his Mercedes G-Wagon. And it's like it doesn't really matter because the brands are sort of in the life now, and so they just become part of the story.
Well, I mean, just to sum up who the two of them are, because people may have heard the names but not know. So Molly May Hague, as I say, went on Love Island, had a bit of a following already for fashion, lifestyle-y type stuff. I think she had her first ever paid post on Instagram at the age of 16.
Yeah.
So I think I read she got paid £25 to post something about a fashion brand, and now she's on 5-figure sum every time she mentions anything. Went on Love Island. I was going to say cynically, but I don't mean cynically at all. As a business opportunity, went up from 100,000 to 2 million. Now is at 8 million. The second she left Love Island, all mention of Love Island off her bio, never mentions it, never talks of herself as part of that world. Absolutely, from the second she left, she was Molly May. She's not been the most showy contestant ever in that show. She's not the one with the biggest personality. It's quite peculiar why she's the one that's got all of those followers, but it comes from an authenticity. It comes from what she endorses, what she doesn't endorse, and she's seen as real, she's seen as relatable, and that's the key thing in our world is, do I believe that this person is wearing these clothes? Do I believe that person...
she likes the fake tan that she's sort of endorsing? So yeah, she
exactly.
makes it...
Well, she's got her own fake tan company.
She's got
now,
her own fake tan
Filter.
line now. She's got she gets 7 figures to be the brand ambassador for Pretty Little Thing.
Pretty Little Thing was her key thing. She became the brand ambassador, then the creative director. Now, since she's just had a kid, she's brand ambassador again. So she's built a huge empire in the way we were told in the 90s that celebrity women were in charge of their own careers. She really does seem to have been in charge of her own career. Tommy Fury, and she is from a very lovely middle-class Stevenage family. I think both her parents were police officers, so she's got a real solidity behind her as well. Tommy Fury is from the Fury family of boxers. He's Tyson Fury's brother. Tyson Fury, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Tommy Fury, I'm going to say not one of the greatest fighters of all time, but certainly makes an absolute fortune. Fought a lot of people who'd lost a lot. His first 4 fights, he fought against people who'd had 12 wins in 181 fights. That were his first 4 fights. And now he makes $1 million a time for fighting KSI and Jake Paul, who are not boxers. So they both have made an awful lot of money, and they've grafted to make an awful lot of money. They form together, and of course they become bigger than the sum of their parts. And they became sort of, I think, slightly iconic to people because people believed in that relationship, and people liked the fact that they were so different, but they were so in love, and that they had that genuine connection. So I think for a generation which is very much not our generation or even the generation below us, it's like a proper good old fashioned
it's Charles and Di.
Yeah, but it is, right? Yeah. It is Charles and Di.
It is, and
it's Charles and Di, but for people who didn't inherit their wealth.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's interesting that you're talking about, their brands work together, and there's a sort of halo effect of both of them being together, and it's worth more than the sum of their parts. In this world, in the old days when celebrity relationships would break up, you would hear from, I don't know, agony aunts or, I don't know, relationship therapists. And I think what's happened here is that you now hear from brand experts, a whole new strata of our society, who will talk to you about, who gets custody really of the likes. And you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, it's interesting. One of the interesting things I think about what she particularly has done is, as you say, she didn't have any mention of Love Island on her bio as soon as she was out. She's also not gone anywhere near television, really. No. Everything she's done has been by the platforms which she controls her following on YouTube and particularly on Instagram. Yeah. And now different things will... And as you say, she is very authentic and people like that, and she doesn't try and hide her struggles. So you sort of sense that this will become woven into the story of the brand, and maybe she'll probably do a book now, and she'll probably do, and maybe she will do more television. But I think it's sort of interesting that, I think they did have an Amazon Prime show. They were in talks with Amazon Prime, yet again, one of these platforms.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say they had an Amazon Prime account. And I was like, yeah, I've got an Amazon Prime account, mate. That doesn't make them special.
They're celebrities. They're just like us.
Yes.
And so I think that they were in talks with Amazon Prime, who yet again would be trying to get this kind of weird audience they don't fully understand into their platform. And they were going to do a reality show, which I'm pretty sure won't be happening now. Yeah. one of the things that's interesting about her, and the reason that she will have this sort of longevity, is that she is of interest to both the sort of women's magazine market and the tabloids.
Yeah.
And so if you can sort of straddle those worlds, and you think people will dress her up for sort of some sophisticated photo shoot, but also all the dramas and all the stories of the life grist for the tabloid mill as well. So she straddles it in quite an odd way. And this is why people are willing to pay so much money to have her push their stuff.
And
really.
here's the fascinating thing about people willing to pay out all of that money is when we talk about what's happened to television, what's happened to magazines, what's happened to local press, all that stuff, this is what's happened. Because advertisers are giving her an awful lot of money and giving Tommy Fury an awful lot of money. This is not new money they found from somewhere. This is the money they used to spend in magazines and on television. And now they literally go directly to the source, give that money to the person who works for that person. And so that is money that has absolutely left the ecosystem of entertainment and gone straight into the pockets of, by the way, someone who's an incredibly smart businesswoman and has done amazing things. So absolutely fair play to her. But that's why if you're running a lifestyle magazine, life is harder, because why am I taking out a one-page, big glossy ad in your lifestyle magazine when I can give somebody who was on Love Island last year the same amount of money and actually get more of an impact?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same with the travel press and things like that, really. When you think, even the place he was in North Macedonia. Now, I never heard of anyone going on holiday to Northern Macedonia.
Tommy Fury.
Tommy Fury is in Northern Macedonia, where whatever incident is alleged to have occurred. And yet, that's one of those destinations that has been rolled out via influencers who've been given various free holidays. Loads of tourist boards. I don't know necessarily whether the Northern Macedonian one has, but I strongly suspect that they've been given.
I saw the tourist slogan, which is North Macedonia, precipitating the sundering.
Well, lots of these tourist boards have paid out to influencers and given them holidays, so that people sort of suddenly start thinking, in that same way that you'd never heard of an Aperol Spritz, and then suddenly everyone's like, what's this drink? Obviously Aperol had existed, but someone had suddenly thought, how am I going to make this thing that no one really cares about, this slightly bitter drink that stands and sits next to Campari? How am I going to get the biggest thing in the whole world? And so all of these things have been rolled out via these people and via these platforms. But I do think the way that you have to sort of tell the platform, you have to sort of update your status all the time. People notice who your parents are following. I find it so creepy, the way that something that didn't exist 14 years ago has just inveigled its way into every aspect, every rite of passage, everything. It hasn't happened if it hasn't happened on that platform.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that, lots of people listening, maybe Molly May Hague and Tommy Fury, are not on their radar. I know absolutely, for lots of people, they will be definitively on their radar. But it's fascinating how siloed culture becomes that, so Molly May and Tommy, they've made tens of millions together since they were on Love Island, and they've built an enormous brand. They're enormously trusted. They're they're huge culturally.
I don't know about tens. Maybe she has, but he hasn't.
Well, he must have made 3 million boxing.
Yeah, maybe. Yes, you're right. The
boxing
purses
plus,
quite,
exactly. He made a lot. He didn't make a lot out of the actual boxing. He made a lot out of the pretend boxing with KSI and Jake Paul. If I say pretend boxing, maybe Jake Paul will call me out. Yeah. But you know what? One night in Vegas with Jake Paul. Just hit
me for 100 million. I'll do it.
Yeah, I'm 6'7", mate. I could take him. No, he's. I think this is an exclusive for the Daily Express. I think Jake Paul would beat me in a fight. I think he would. But a couple of million, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
You can build those enormous empires and still be invisible to 80% of the British public. And it's that age-old thing of our culture is driven by advertising, and our culture is driven by who will buy things and how do brands reach those people. And so brands are very, very happy to spend every single penny they have to reach 10, 15, 20% of the British public, and the other 80% can be absolutely unaware of what's going on. And I feel like that's what's happened with Molly May and Tommy, because genuinely, to quite a substantial amount of people, they are huge, and this is a huge story.
Yeah. But also the brands, you can see how worth it is. as I say, they're now organically mentioned in all the news stories. Swinging Grey Goose vodka, arriving in his Mercedes G-Wagon, all of these stories. They've got so many of these little labels and hits in them, these stories. And it's almost because we're so used to reading that stuff online that journalists don't think twice, but the way they're typing out, they've read so much of this. I mean, I want to say nonsense because it is nonsense to me, but they've read so much of this nonsense, but you just type your way through all the labels and all the bits and bobs. And I guess it takes up the word count. And suddenly you've realised how much free advertising have they done?
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, because traditionally, what they would always do, they'd say how expensive someone's house was. Yeah. So you walk out of your house and it's worth. So that's how I know that their house in Cheshire is worth 3.5 million.
Well, they used to do. I've once read a really good article about how they always would mention property prices whenever it was a murder victim. They'd always say within easy reach of Jerry Hall's 10 million Richmond Park home or something, and you'd think, someone's been found on the edge of the golf course. Really, I don't think we have to. But they always end up putting the property prices in. That wasn't advertising for anything. It was just sort of revealing unwittingly a kind of complete, not our national obsession with property, that even in these dreadful stories. But now you can totally see why it's worth it to the brands to give all of this stuff, because it just becomes part of the fabric of the relationship, of the story, of the breakdown of the relationship. There's no bad press here. But I'm not going to not drink Grey Goose because it broke up Tommy and Molly May.
Oh, I won't drink it because it broke them up. Every single brand, I call them out now, every single brand that helped precipitate this sundering, I am boycotting. G-Wagon, that's going back. Grey Goose, that's going down the sink. Honestly, I'm so upset for Molly May.
Vodka doesn't break people up, Richard. People do.
Yeah, do you know what?
Do.
Danish models do.
Yeah.
If the stories are to be believed. Which they may well not be. There's a hilarious sort of cascade of that thing of when celebrities like Molly May are photographed, where they always talk about what they're wearing.
Yeah.
And if you are a gentleman of a certain age like me and you're ever photographed at something, at an event or something like that, it would be just because it's just the way they write. They will always say what you're wearing, and you'll be like, looking strapping in jeans and trainers.
But that's because nothing has occurred. You and Ingrid perhaps have walked along a red carpet. They've got to get 40 paragraphs out of that and some other things that have happened. And the reason they have to get that out is because the stories that used to appear in newspapers, which would often be, say it was a celebrity story, maybe it was 10 or 12 paragraphs, and each paragraph was a sentence if it was in a tabloid. Now, because they wanted to keep people on those, something like Mail Online, which pioneered this thing where there's masses of photos and there's masses of copies. So you're staying so long on the page to go all the way down, and you're obviously, this is so that they can sell advertising. And so they absolutely have to talk about clothes because there's so little else to say.
So Love Island, fascinating. So as I say, Molly May really distanced herself from it, but absolutely was the making of it. She has said, and I'm minded to believe it, that she would have got to where she's going without Love Island. She was already on such a steep upward curve anyway, but I don't think it was unhelpful. And in terms of other people, so Ekin Su, who won a couple of years ago, she was on US Traitors, which I finished, by the way, and is brilliant.
Superlative.
And they've just recommissioned. They've got season 4 and 5 both coming out of US Traitors, but I know this is a digression, but people would never mind us talking about the Traitors. It's because they have game players on that, because they have people who've been on strategic games in the US. It's so interesting, and the last one, it was properly like it was all out on the table.
The contestants have become sentient, Richard, as we know, as we've always said, that there's such a sort of. There's an iterative thing of that show that the more it's aired, the more people understand how to beat the game. Yeah. Without giving any more away, that series is particularly good for that. Yeah,
it's very, very, and it also shows that even when people have worked it out, the game is still compelling, and there's still ways and means through, and what have you. I can't wait. Listen, I know we're talking about Molly May, but no one minds, do you? I cannot wait for UK Celebrity Traitors. No, that's going to be so good.
I think Molly May should go on it.
Oh my God! Well, Tommy Fury should go on it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? But it's constantly when you think of people, every single celebrity now, I think of them. Would they be good on UK Traitors, or would they not be good on UK Traitors? I would not do it. I couldn't do it. It'd be too.
We're dividing all celebrities via that means now. It's the only way of actually. It's Cavaliers and Roundheads.
I would find it too stressful.
Like so would I. I'd go to pieces completely.
Yeah, like doing fantasy football or something. I can't. It becomes too much.
Rest assured, we will be carping from the sidelines, saying, "Oh, they made a massive strategic error there."
Yeah. We'll definitely be doing that. But yeah, so I would say things like Love Island. If I was a young entrepreneur with a few followers, I would 100% go on Love Island.
I don't think people care so much about Love Island anymore, actually. I think there must be other routes. I think that has I think it's less because again, once anything's hung around for long enough, it becomes slightly naff and cliched to do it.
Yeah.
In the way that even Big Brother did in its sort of first run. And I think that there are other ways through, but you can really see how the brands will just stay. They're so far beyond it, these two now.
Yeah.
That they're just a sort of rolling brand story.
Exactly. And fascinating for anyone listening who doesn't watch Love Island, so didn't see them on Love Island, doesn't follow either of them on Instagram or read the Mail online. So
they didn't win that Love Island, by the way, we should say. Yeah, they were, they were not. But which
is often the way, like One Direction, not winning X Factor. It's often it's the non-winners who do well. But anyone who has missed every single opportunity to catch up on the Molly May Hague and Tommy Fury story, rest assured it's been out there. Rest assured it's been attracting a huge amount of money, and rest assured that money has come from what we think of as traditional media, and that is just going to continue.
Yeah, read any of the stories about it and see how many brands are just name-checked for free, by the way. The journalist who's writing that story is not getting paid anything.
Yeah, and then imagine running a legacy media company who absolutely rely on advertising for their income.
Sorry, why would if I'm Grey Goose, why would I advertise on Mail Online? You've mentioned it 40 times today already. I don't need to pay.
I know. Listen, Grey Goose are doing... If Grey Goose are listening, listen, we've mentioned them now.
Yeah.
We should have got in touch beforehand. Perhaps people will think we did.
Yes.
We should have got in touch with Grey Goose.
We always do it the wrong way around.
Yeah, we're such idiots.
Fail. We always give our best ideas away.
See, and that is why you are not Molly May Hague and I am not Tommy Fury.
That's one of so many reasons.
Yeah, there are a number of reasons, aren't there? But listen, we wish them both well, but it'd be fascinating to see where Molly May goes next. I suspect there is more and more and more money in her future. But we wish them both all the best, and especially the little baby, Bambi. So is the baby called Bambi Fury?
Yeah.
Wow. If you, by the way, Tyson Fury, I always thought if you were to write a book and said, I'm going to have a boxer in this book, I'm going to call him Tyson Fury, you're like, mate, come on, that name you have to change.
You can have one or the other.
Yeah,
both is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's no good. That's like Steven Spielberg's press officer is called Terry Press.
No.
And you're like, come on.
Sorry, can we quickly talk about Mr. Spielberg? Because I believe I've seen on one of the platforms we've just mentioned that you have met Mr. Spielberg
I think
week.
it described what we were wearing as
Last
well.
Week, yeah.
It's fascinating when you have a picture of Steven Spielberg and you don't talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark, but you talk about his baseball cap. It was amazing. He was amazing.
Did you call him Mr. Spielberg?
No.
That's great.
I called him Big Steve.
Classy.
No, I called him Steven. And firstly, he just had that incredible presence. There's certain people you meet where you go, oh my God, you're Steven Spielberg. And it was so lovely seeing even the other actors were so excited to be around him. I won't say what anyone said, but Ben Kingsley, so Ben Kingsley was talking to me about Schindler's List and their experience in such a beautiful way. And he clearly loved Steven Spielberg, and it was so gorgeous. And then Paul Freeman, who's in the movie, who was in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they were talking about that. And God, Spielberg, he could not have been nicer. I mean, and all the extras, it's quite a big scene that day, so a lot of supporting artists out there. And people spotted me, they go, and then suddenly there's Spielberg, who weirdly was hidden behind me. Spielberg comes out, and everyone, oh my God, was so, but everyone, all the actors, everyone was so excited to see him. And his relationship with Chris Columbus is so lovely. They adore each other. And he came in by helicopter.
Of course.
And then we looked up afterwards. Ingrid looked up where he must have helicoptered in from. And he'd helicoptered in from a private yacht in the south of France with Bono and Bruce Springsteen. That's the life,
all three
isn't
of them on the holiday together?
Yeah. With their partners.
God, why can't ITV film that? I mean, that's something...
I know, yeah, that's a...
yeah, come on.
They would all be very good on Celebrity Traitors.
Yeah, they great booking, if you're listening.
Yeah, really, really good booking. No, it was, honestly, it was a dream, and he was delightful, and it's a beautiful sunny day, and the world came out to meet him, and everyone was... He was everything that you would want him to be. And I was able to say to, because listen, everyone said everything to Spielberg that he needs to say, but I was able to say right at the end, I said, look, thank you for everything you do and the joy that you've brought the world, and I left it at that. I thought I never need to say another word, because I just said thank you. For if you think about how he has entertained us, the joy he's brought, the stories he's told us, the tears we've shed because of him, it's nice to be able to stand there, shake his hand and say thank you. So that was nice.
Oh,
yeah. The Daily Telegraph, Marina, as I said at the beginning, there seemed to be a thing sort of around the election. There were all sorts of headlines in the Telegraph. Can I read you a couple?
Please do.
I think some were Telegraph, some were Sunday Telegraph. But
Was it an election or an apocalypse?
Yes, what exactly? I mean, Armageddon is upon us and Britain will never be the same again was one of their headlines. Labour will bankrupt every generation. The UK is about to enter a nightmare much darker than anyone yet realises. Although, how can you write that headline if you haven't realised?
Yeah.
Anyone apart from me has yet realised. Rachel Reeves has just admitted the grotesque truth about her plans for Britain. And I loved the just before the election, there are just 1,000 hours to save Britain. Now, this feels, listen, Daily Telegraph, of course, is a right-leaning newspaper and can write the news it wants to write in the way it does. Knows its readers, absolutely. But there's something about this that doesn't make it feel like this is a serious daily newspaper. Is there something behind that?
Well, I think that's very charitable of you, because I've got to say that I think all papers are guilty of writing absolutely nutso headlines. I mean, maybe like there's a few, you don't see them so many nutso ones in the FT or whatever, but in general, like who among us has not read in one's own publication something where you think, wow, that's crazy, but it draws readers in. And clearly, I mean, it's unclear how many hours we have left to save the West / Britain / whatever. It's supposed to come across as quite muscular and what have you, but to me it always sounds kind of weak because it sounds so mad and deranged.
Yeah.
Having said that, as I say, no paper is immune from these. And as audiences age out and people are constantly searching, as you know, the news industry was unfortunately run by journalists, which means that it's been run very badly for a very long time. What happened with the Telegraph, actually, it's quite interesting. The Telegraph was bought, or its massive debts were taken on by a company called Redbird IMI, which is the sort of investment arm of the UAE government, really. And
oh, really?
Yes. And then
it's owned by...
Well, it was going to be, but Tories suddenly brought in legislation saying that foreign state powers can't own our valuable newspapers and current affairs periodicals, etc., because the Telegraph group, we should say, comprises the Daily Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph, obviously the websites, and which are subscription, and the Spectator.
Yeah.
The sale, I think people hope it will be done at some point next month in September, but there are all sorts of people who are in for the Telegraph.
Right.
And I think you might see, you will have to decide whether you will see more or less of those types of headlines depending on who gets it. So you've got people like News Corp, the Murdoch family might like something like The Spectator. Paul Marshall, I think.
So The Spectator is a magazine,
The Spectator
but a
is
sort of culture, politics.
It's a very old, centuries old, yes, and it's got culture, it's got politics, it's got all sorts of things, but it's a sort of prized and it's a prestige asset. And they've also expanded. They've got an online US web organization, which we'll talk more about in a minute, in general about the US. But Paul Marshall, the hedge fund guy who backs GB News and Unheard, the website, very much wants The Spectator, and maybe he could get that. Maybe he could hive off that bit and get it for, I don't know, 100 million. Who knows what it will actually cost? There are some other mad bids out there. There's Nadeem Zahawi, our former chancellor, and many other jobs, who is thinking of he's trying to get foreign investment together, and then have Boris Johnson, someone you may remember from newspapers like the Daily Telegraph and countries like ours, to be the global editor in chief.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But he doesn't want it. He doesn't really want to work, Boris, does he? But
no.
I suppose a job like that, an editor-in-chief, you don't have to do anything.
Editor at large.
Isn't
it, every time I see that, I think, I actually know some editors at large who file constantly and are brilliant. But in general, I just think, oh, yeah, you're just up there on the masthead. So who else is in for the Telegraph? The Daily Mail General Trust, which is who own the...
So the Daily Mail and or News Corp could buy it, and that's not a problem for the Monopolies Commission.
If you go over 50% of the market, then you're in. You can't. But what's interesting with the Mail is that the Mail created Mail Online. A guy called Martin Clark basically built that up from a nothing start, an online offering, and it became absolutely massive. No one knew what people hadn't heard of the Daily Mail, even in like New York or something like that. Maybe you'd heard it, but not as a general thing. They've got all their own media in the US, but what people want is those Anglophone subscribers, because it's a big, big pool of people that you can sell your content to already.
So if you're a UK newspaper, what you're saying is there is a ready-made market in America, which is 5 times the size of the UK market. Yeah. They all speak your language. You have the tools to make a website and to report on things. why not expand?
This is what The Guardian did.
Try
This
and
is,
get those
you know,
people.
also Australia. Again, these Anglophone countries are, you don't have to change anything and you can just hire more staff and create more content. So Martin Clark basically built the Mail Online into from nothing to something which is now the 12th biggest news website in the US.
Wow.
The BBC is the 10th, to
Yeah.
put it in perspective. The Guardian's the 18th. The Sun is the 23rd. So something that was once our massive market leader in terms of news is now fallen back. Now, the Telegraph doesn't even sort of rate on that. But Lord Rothermere, who owns the Daily Mail and is taking it back into private ownership, obviously sees what happened with Mail Online and how you can create something. And he says, we believe there's an enormous potential in the US, which has sadly become polarised between the left and the right. Yeah, you think? Both in print and broadcasting, for a centre-right publication like the Telegraph. Now, when you read headlines like that, you're not really thinking centre-right, are you?
Yeah,
You're thinking wingnut right.
Yes.
So that's what's interesting about those things. If the Mail were to buy it, it will be interesting to see what they did if they were trying to reverse that brand into a strategy they've already proved with Mail Online. So they would want to be trying to, I don't know, I guess create a right of centre thing. Is there the market for that in MAGA world in America now? You know, right-wing content is really right-wing in the US. As we've talked about on the podcast before, their news market is so polarised. They don't have anything like the BBC, which is this great, huge anchor at the centre of British public life that really lots of people trust and use all the time. They don't have anything like that. So it might work. But you notice with the Mail how successful it's been for them. You've now noticed that more and more is going behind a paywall on Mail Online.
Right.
Now I notice they've got something called Mail Plus, so it's going freemium, as they call it. So lots of this, and they've studied so well over all of that time what goes viral, what people love, what gets the biggest hits. And now almost everything, I subscribe to it, but almost everything I want to read, I notice
is going
more and more. First of all, it was like 2 or 3 things a day, and now it's so many things because they've worked out how to make that money.
And by the way, is their success in America because their content is not explicitly political? It is actually lifestyle and celebrity.
The celebrity side of it has driven it completely. They do have some political stuff, but it's not where you go to for that.
That's not the stuff behind the paywall.
Yeah, no, it's become the international. It's become an international thing, and American celebrities would give exclusives to Mail Online. American paparazzi will want to sell to Mail Online because it's a great place to put. You know, they run so many pictures. It just became this huge phenomenon.
So, is there a category error? It seems like there is to me that some of these newspapers. So the Telegraph. Let's take Telegraph as an example. That's we're going to skew right politically. We'll skew right a bit more politically, so we get more clicks, and then we can break into America like our rivals, the Daily Mail, did with Mail Online, because that's a huge market for us, and this is the way for us to do it. But actually, that's not what happened. What happened is the people behind the Mail Online really understood what people actually want on the internet, which is celebrity and lifestyle and not politics. And if you want to break into the political world in the States, actually the market is not where you want it to be, and the market is not as big as you're hoping it's going to be.
No, you're still, even though obviously there are many more people, you're dealing often with fringe markets or polarised markets. Yeah. So the Telegraph has tried to build, they kept saying we want 1 million subscribers, that's how they want to pay for their journalism. It's hard to know because a lot of these, and they have hit that, at the end of last year, I think they hit their target of 1 million subscribers. But some of those are paying, £1 for 3 months, and there is masses and masses of churn. I haven't seen anyone do, and I still think there's a place for this, is micropayment for articles. And people talk about this all the time, and no one's really, you don't see anywhere that's really made it work. But so many people would pay small sums for some articles. And people talk about, would you pay for 10 articles a month? People forget they've got that, and they don't really want to. But if you pay for the thing that you want to read right now, and it's a small amount of money, I still think it could work, and someone just hasn't cracked how to do it yet.
Because the Telegraph, one thing they're very, very good at is their like travel and property. Yeah. If ever you want to sort of look up, if you want to go somewhere in the country, go, what's a nice hotel in, and you put it into the internet, the Telegraph is always the first there. Every single time. It's the first there for holidays, for houses, where you want to restaurants. They're amazing at that. But because there's not enough on the Telegraph that I particularly, I just don't subscribe because it doesn't interest me. Whereas I would of course pay 50p to read an article about something.
About a place you're going that you want to read right now. Yes,
exactly
I think
that.
I really think that someone soon will make that work, because as advertising just dwindles for everybody.
But would the argument be, so there's money to be made in newspapers and made online and stuff, there is money to be made if you do it in the smart way. But are people trying to buy the Spectator and the Telegraph in the same way that GB News is run in order to have some sort of megaphone for their views rather than to have a commercial organisation?
Well, that's, for a long time, newspapers have been, the ones that have been very successful. It's difficult. You need to have a sort of benevolent proprietor, or someone who is willing to invest a lot, or someone who's got, or clever ways of funding it all. And it remains this big prestige brand. I don't think it has any sort of particular brand recognition in the US, although they have spent much more money. The Spectator have spent lots of money in the US, and there's a whole Spectator US dedicated bit. So that, in that sort of sense of like a right-wing periodical, there's much more of a tradition of that there. And but again, these are smaller pickings. If you want to go sort of mainstream, like Mail Online, as you say, I don't think you can necessarily do that via politics. And I think it's a lovely idea of Lord Rothermere's that people want some centre-right content that isn't barkingly MAGA in America. But if the Americans haven't built it, then I'm not quite sure.
Who will?
They will come.
And is there a feeling about who actually will buy it, or is that still absolutely up in the air?
I think it's really up in the air, and it depends on the price. I think most people think that Paul Marshall really wants to have the Spectator, and they could hive that off maybe. But there's some, people are saying, oh, Murdoch really wants to have it. I don't know, as in old Murdoch.
Yes,
old man Murdoch.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know. Clearly, the Mail do want it.
But why do they want it? That's just out of interest.
There are economies of scale on all of these things,
okay,
and obviously, having had such an unbelievable success with Mail Online, they believe they can replicate it in some way, or there's a business case. Maybe they don't spend as much, but there's a business case for getting those Anglophone readers.
And even if it doesn't have 1 million subscribers, it has 1 million email addresses of people who have at one point subscribed.
Exactly.
And there's value in that.
Whether it will have more or less mad headlines, we'll have to see. But if you notice, it doesn't have it. That seems to me a very ancient form of clickbait. Running those headlines that just sound kind of really nuts. Whereas clickbait has become much more sophisticated. And if you look at the way they used to put things on Mail Online in the so-called sidebar of shame, where it was really like, look at this person on the beach, they look utter crap. Look at so-and-so, and now it will have some completely disingenuous way of saying exactly the same thing, but it will now hook you in. But everyone has become very familiar with the language and the way of putting it, and everyone knows what's happening. And if you read the comments in the bottom, they all say, we know what you're doing, but you think, but you read all the way down and you posted the comment.
You clicked on it. I saw one lovely Giles and Mary from Gogglebox, and there's a picture of Giles and said, sad Giles says he and Mary are incompatible. But you think, where in the olden days, they've split up. But I didn't click on the article, but I know that article would be Giles saying it's extraordinary how our marriage has lasted and how much we're in love, because really we're incompatible. So it's amazing. Isn't it amazing how love works? I know that's what the article is. I'm not clicking on it, but it's it's disingenuous, isn't it? But listen.
I mean, I think that I sometimes see in different titles to the Mail. I think they're quite clever, because what you get if you do that all the time is people get really angry, and they just think, I'm going to stop clicking on all this because I know every time you've led me down the garden path and then it's not the thing you said. So actually, if you want to keep readers and you want to keep them coming back, don't treat them with contempt.
Yeah.
This episode is presented by our friends at Sky, proud partners of The Rest is Entertainment.
Can we talk a little bit about the incredible range of documentaries that Sky show?
Please, I love a good documentary.
There's an incredible one called Klitschko, More Than a Fight, which is about Vitaly Klitschko, former world boxing heavyweight champion, currently mayor of Kyiv.
And that comes out on the 15th of August, and it draws on a whole wealth of archive, personal footage, new interviews to tell both brothers' story.
If you love true crime, there's a new documentary called The Body Next Door, which is out now. A really, really fascinating case, a fascinating crime, and a very well-made documentary. But can I save the best to last? The best for me, anyway, which is a documentary that's currently shooting, will be coming up soon. I have just one word for you: darts. The whole world is obsessed with Luke Littler, this incredible 17-year-old. The world of darts is so extraordinary, amazing characters you don't quite get in any other sport. I
think it's fair to say.
So it's a drive to survive for darts, and Sky are currently filming that, and I literally cannot wait.
An absolute banker there.
So immerse yourself in the world's most captivating stories with award-winning documentaries from Sky. Now, Matthew Perry and the awful ketamine-assisted death and the people who enabled him, the doctors and the assistants, and so on. We want to talk about that a little bit and what it tells us about Hollywood, what it tells us about fame. What's your take on it?
Ever since Matthew Perry died, he was found floating in his hot tub. They have been investigating, and 5 people have been charged, including his personal assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, and 2 doctors who were, some of their messages saying, I wonder how much this moron will pay. Let's find out. This is a story. There have always been bent doctors as long as Hollywood has been around. And there's something about your body effectively being the money maker that right back in the golden age of the studios, they were all, people like Judy Garland being given pep pills. When Debbie Reynolds got Singing in the Rain, she said, I'm so tired. And her doctor said, you must have a week off. And the studio said, get another doctor and have these pills. And she thought, I wonder if these are the vitamins that helps Judy Garland. Judy Garland said that they would give me and Mickey Rooney pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. This is from her biography, which is really good. Then they'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us out with sleeping pills. Then after 4 hours, they'd wake us up and give us the pep pills again so we could work for 72 hours in a row. Half the time we were hanging from the ceiling, but it was a way of life for us. She was dead of an overdose at 47. So there've always been these ways. And actually you see it in music as well, as we know, where you're on an arena tour and at a certain point your entourage expands to maybe you've got someone who's giving you B12 injections because you can't get ill, you can't possibly get sick and cancel things. And so in a way there are all these people always trying to keep you on the road making money. Now, this wasn't the case with Matthew Perry, which I think is really sad. Also, it's terrible when you get into any situation where no one can say no to you.
Yeah.
And clearly this assistant who'd been his assistant for 25 years, you imagine the identity becomes almost completely subsumed by the stars. It's really odd, like a sort of faithful old retainer. He'd injected him with ketamine 3 times already that day. This is such a sort of mess.
Yeah.
But what I think is so interesting about a story like this is just how people can kind of go down deeper and deeper into the pit of obvious criminality. This story made me think of a story that came out a few months ago, the story of P. Diddy, and he's now at a mercy of a number of lawsuits for sex trafficking, civil lawsuits alleging rape, exploitation, violence. They turned over his house, and he was sitting in an airport on a plane, and they got onto that plane, and he was free to go in the end. But there was one guy on the plane, what people now think was the drug mule. So that guy is arrested. And of course, he wanted to be a music producer and so on, in the same way that there was someone who wanted to be a film producer who's involved with getting all this ketamine for Matthew Perry. And then a video came out for his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, P. Diddy's ex-girlfriend, a 2016 surveillance video. This is how long, this came out this year. And it's in a hotel corridor, and he is attacking her, kicking her, punching her, and then dragging her limp body back to the room. So this is what I'm talking about. You think about the level, the amount of people who have to be involved in the entourage in various ways of covering this all up, of making things go away, of protecting the star. Outside places like the hotel is going to hand over its security footage, apparently, for a price. And you read all this stuff. It's so lawless, and it's why we're obsessed with these stories. It's like something from, I don't know, Game of Thrones or from history, these courts, these fiefdoms where nobody can say no, and people descend into like absolutely bizarre group behaviour, which...
Well, it's a one industry town, LA. I mean, it's not, but it is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely dominated by entertainment, and particularly by the movie and television business. It's a ludicrously profitable one as well, if you get to the very, very top of the pyramid. And so if you are a doctor, or if you are someone who works in a hotel, everywhere you go in LA, someone is on their way up to that world. Anyone who's working in a hotel, anyone who's working in a restaurant, anyone who's parking your car, they all want to be somebody in that industry. So of course, if something happens, a big star comes in, of course you keep your mouth shut about it. Of course, certain doctors are attracted to that, are attracted to clients who have very little time, a huge amount of money, and perhaps are not the smartest people in the world. If you are someone who wants to prey on people, that's the perfect place to go. It's full of huge stars who are enabled and who are said yes to all of the time. By the way, also lots of huge stars who are absolutely smart as whips.
Yeah.
And you couldn't, do a number on any of them. But there's enough who are not that smart. And so, yeah, it attracts hangers-on and it attracts blaggers and it attracts criminals, because if you have an industry that's raking in billions and billions and billions and billions of pounds every year, and that money is staying in that city and in the pockets of a very small amount of people, then if you're any sort of grifter anyway, you know that getting 0.0001% of that money is going to give you a very, very nice lifestyle.
Yeah. What I find so extraordinary about it is the level to which people can kid themselves and say, I needed the job. There are other jobs. With Michael Jackson, one of his advisors said, I once said to him, Michael, you're going to wind up in a lot of trouble. Why don't you stop all this stuff with the young boys? And Jackson just says, I don't want to. And you think, yeah, but did you leave at that point? Did you, the advisor? No. Did all the people who worked in that house, did all the people who worked around it? No, nobody left. And everyone says, oh, it's really hard to get a job. There's something else that is keeping you there. There is the proximity to a certain, there is being part of the court. There is being part of it. It's not, there are other jobs. There are many other things you could do. It's much more psychological, the reason that people stay. And I think that the sheer volume of people involved in these activities, in enabling Matthew Perry or in sort of shutting down bad stories about P. Diddy for years and years and years. These are so many people involved in this. There is something that keeps people just like moths to the flame coming back for it.
Yeah, fame and power are very seductive. So, for example, if you were part of the court of Henry VIII, say, now, an incredible place to be, and you're always going exciting places and mad stuff is happening all the time. You're aware that it's very precarious. You're aware that if you're working in the court of King Henry VIII, you are more likely to be killed or imprisoned than if you're working in a nice country house somewhere in Shropshire. Right? You know that. And you could go and get a gig in Shropshire any day you wanted, but people still gravitate to it. It is seductive. You see it all the time. And a city where it's all that, where everyone is either famous or trying to be famous. It's like, that's the ketamine in a way. But when you become super, super, super famous, you just think, oh, well, there is nothing here. So if you're Matthew Perry, you think, there isn't anything here other than the house and the car and these stuff. But if what's in your heart isn't there, it's not suddenly going to get there when you become famous. And so another drug is needed. Fame is the drug for so long.
Yeah.
And when you run out of whatever that did to you, then, I guess
it's a gateway to harder ones. But
comes in and takes its place.
It was interesting, the assistants, you can see the LinkedIn profiles of these people. So you can see his LinkedIn profile in which he says, I thrive in chaotic situations which call for order. I am discreet, loyal, and honour absolute confidentiality.
But yeah, as you say, the docs is the most shocking thing, and a long history in Hollywood and the music business of abusive
and anywhere
doctors.
And anywhere. There's plenty in London. There are plenty of people who will give you what you want within private. There's a whole sort of underbelly of private medicine, of people who will. We have it less, I think, in our country because we have a form of socialised healthcare, but it does exist. But I think when it becomes such a constantly capitalist enterprise, and you're being charged enormous amounts of money for kind of legal prescription drugs, then perhaps the lines get more and more blurred. But it's obviously, I don't know why we should think that doctors are uniquely noble people, because history has shown us that lots of them aren't, and it's just one of those things. They're just another group who could take advantage of you. But it is shocking to read people who took all sorts of oaths and went through long training saying this about someone.
Yeah, because it is not shocking that drug dealers will give you drugs. Right? That's not shocking. That's very much, listen, that's what it says on the tin. It is not shocking that a personal assistant who's looked after you for 25 years and is absolutely codependent on you will do the things you ask them to do. It is shocking that someone who is a doctor and whose job is to make sure that you are safe and sane and happy and healthy sells you the thing that
But then look
you.
at the opioid crisis. We know this.
Yeah.
We know this was not begun by doctors, but it was enabled by doctors.
That role of assistance is very interesting in Hollywood because everyone's got them, and actually it's a very good place. But the dark side of it can be very, very dangerous.
We should say that there is a functional version, ideally, of this type of ecosystem around every big star, because you need lawyers and assistants and hairstylists and perhaps doctors who are giving you vitamin shots or that. It's when it sort of just clicks on each of those a few removes, and suddenly you are in a really twisted court.
And also, while you're working, while you're going around the world, actually, those people are all working for you. When you have downtime, which celebrities do sometimes, and they're not working for a bit, then all those people are still on the payroll. All those people have still got to find something to do, and it's no wonder that occasionally
they make themselves indispensable.
They make themselves indispensable, exactly. Recommendation time. You're very kindly already recommended We Solve Murders,
recommend your book,
which
Richard.
is available for pre-order.
Available for pre-order, as is Craig Brown's new book, which is called A Voyage Round the Queen. Craig Brown is one of our funniest, most brilliant, cleverest writers. And he's sort of, in the last few books, kind of reinvented the whole genre of biography. He did
the Amazing Beatles one, didn't he?
The Princess Margaret one, called Ma'am Darling, is one of my favourite books. It's absolutely hysterical. I laughed, I think, on every page. But the new one is about the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II, and it is absolutely brilliant. And that comes out on the 29th of August.
I will recommend, I'm going to go old school. I think you get it on Apple TV, when you're always looking for a new American sitcom, like just a lovely 20-minute that sees you through the day, Party Down. So it's from a while ago, maybe 10 years ago, but yeah, really, really, really funny. So if you're just looking for like one of those proper old-fashioned, funny American sitcoms that you can just, watch a couple of episodes of, Party Down. We're going to do a question and answer episode on Thursday.
We most certainly are. Please join us for that. Do send your questions to therestersentertainment@gmail.com.
And we will see you all on Thursday.
Bye, everyone.